Hello everyone, this is Shubham, and in this video we will learn that how we can work on very large data sets within Microsoft Excel with the help of BI tools that is available. The first one is Microsoft Power Query and the second one is Microsoft Power Pivot. So as you know, a lot of Excel students and professionals assume that in one Excel worksheet there are only 1 million of rows. And if you have the large data sets, for example, 2 million, 4 million, or 10 millions of rows, then how we can get into one sheet? So technically, this is right because as we can see that there are only 1 million rows as per one worksheet in Excel workbook. But if you have, for example, large data sets, you can use Power BI to get the data and then move that data to the Power Pivot rather than publishing that or pasting that data onto normal worksheet. Okay, so I will be sharing you that the solution, and after this video you will be able to, you can change your perception that Excel is also be able to handle large data sets. And we will see what are those certain limitations to those BI tools as well. Remember that the techniques which I will be following using the Microsoft Excel, Power Query and Power Pivot, technically that will remain same if you are a user of Microsoft Power BI. There you can also use Power Query and append the data from multiple Excel workbooks or other data source. So let's get started. As we know that the maximum number of rows in one Excel worksheet is approximately 1 million, right? But let's say this is not true. If you have a large data sets and we want to ERP application, and you can use to connect with that as well. And once you get those large multiple files data in append in the query, you will use the Power Pivot. Okay, Power Query in Power Pivot is available almost in most of the versions of Microsoft Excel. For older version of Microsoft Excel, like in particular scenario, so I have added some complex points to this example, so everything should be covered in this video. So first scenario I have added is that we will be getting data from our Excel workbooks saved in a specific folder. Each Excel workbook contains a worksheet which consists of data of around 1 million rows in it. Okay, so technically there will be 4 Excel workbooks, around 4 million of data would be there, and we will be appending that data in Power Query. Another point is that each Excel worksheet name is different and the data is stored as a in table format in each of the workbook, and their names are also different. So technically every Excel file contains a worksheet. Names are different and the data table names are also different too. Then technically, as I told you, we will be getting around 4 million of rows. It could be larger than that as well as in your scenario, but technically this will cover the concept. Okay, so each workbook contains more than 1 million of rows. So we have 4 workbooks, 4 sheets, and technically there are 4 plus million rows data, which we will be having together. The number of columns in each Excel workbooks are not same. There are 4 Excel workbook and the number of columns are not same. Some data have 3 columns, some data is 5 columns. And the sequence is not same. So that could be possible as well. And there are few additional columns, like if some data in monthly file has 3 columns, so I have put 2 more columns in other files so that it could become more complex in a situation. And we will see how Power Query is able to handle those kind of situations. Okay. So I hope this point is clear to you, and that particularly happens in real time, that each of your data sets does not consist of same number of columns. It does not matter with the relevancy of rows and records, but alright, some of the key points we need to consider here with the Power Pivot for Excel. There is theoretically no limit on the number of rows of data. The actual limitation depends on the desktop system in order to make this process smooth. So as I told you, Power Pivot is available in almost all of the versions right now. Let's see the practical part. So as you can see here, I have made a folder in my local hard drive, that is E drive. That is the folder name. And we have 4 Excel files, 4 Excel workbooks, right? And you can see the size of each of the Excel workbook. Each Excel workbook contains one sheet as having more than 1 million of rows. So 2 files are of 70 MB. One is 12 MB and the other one is 20 MB. Why? Because it contains more columns as compared to the other ones. Okay. All right. So let's get started. How to get this from millions of data all together, right? With the help of Power Query and then Power Pivot in Microsoft Excel. Let me show you the data as well. So you can see here, I have opened the workbook for the month of January. It consists of 4 columns: saves, date, saves USD, year and month. And if I go downwards, you can see that records are of 1 million rows, right? So each of the workbook and worksheet contains 1 million of records. Let's go to next month. This month of February, workbook contains just 3 columns. Now we don't have that 4 columns likewise in the month of January, right? So we have uneven number of columns as well. If you see in the month of April, the sequence of the columns is also changed as compared to the January file and February file. You can see our sales USD is the second column, right? And an additional column is available in the file for the month of April, where you will not find the column of day, and likewise in other files. See? So this particular makes it more complex that the sequence of columns in each of the file is not similar and the number of columns are also not similar, right? But make sure that if you are a user of Power Query is a case sensitive, and for example, if you have written a title or a header called month in capital letters in any other file, you have written it in small letter, so that will create a trouble for you. So the spelling should be correct for each other header and case sensitive as well. All right, so let's get started. Okay, I have opened a new workbook. So let's go to the data, and this is get and transform data group, which is known as Power Query. So I will click on get data from the file and I will click on from folder. I have defined the folder path and I will now click on open. So it will open up a window and this is the metadata. Okay. So what we need to do here is, because all the sheet names, all the table names are different. If at the initial stage, if I click on combine and load, it will give me an error because it will not be successful to execute and append the data correctly. So we will click on transform data to get into the Power Query first. Okay, so let's click. Now let's open the data, metadata into the Power Query editor. Now we will do some steps here. We need the content and name column, whereas the other columns are not necessary here. So we need to remove them. So I will select content and name column. Right click and I will click on remove other columns. Okay. Now we will add one custom column. So for doing that, you will go to add column tab and click on custom column. Okay. So let's define a name for the custom column data and let's write a M language code. Remember, it is case sensitive. So Excel workbook, bracket open. Let's double click on content and close the bracket. Okay. Click OK. Now it creates a custom column for us, name as data. And we know that each of the Excel workbook contains a table. Let's open this drop down menu. Uncheck this field, which is use original name as prefix. Make sure all columns are check marked. Click OK. All right. So once it is expanded now, we will expand the drop down of kind column and we will just select the table. Okay. Now we are ready to fetch the data. So as you can see here, we have a column that is known as data.1. Let's open the drop-down menu and you can see here all the column headers are available, which were there in the Excel workbook. So let's click OK and here it is, right? So unnecessary columns, we can delete them. Right click, remove. Okay, if you want table names or if you want the file names, you can keep these columns. I will keep any one column. Let's say remove the file names. The table names are there. So this is as names, and what we are not required, we don't want item, column, kind, and hidden column. So just select them, right click, remove columns, and all your data is here from 4 different Excel workbooks of around 4 million, right? Now, once you have the data, what you will do, you will click on close and load, but you will not click on this menu, right? This option close and load because this will close on this interface and load the data onto the interface of spreadsheet. And you know that the spreadsheet has a limitation of 1 million rows. So technically, after running the process for a few minutes, that will give you an error. So what you need to do is you need to close and load 2. And then you need to switch this very large data set to the Power Pivot window. Okay, so let's click on close and load 2. Alright, so now it shows you a small window of import data and we will say only create connection. The first choice will be only create connection and we will check mark on add this data to the data model. So this data is technically going to the data model which will be, which can access through Power Pivot add-in. Okay, so we are not technically publishing the data on the spreadsheet interface. Okay, so make sure you selected these options whenever you have big data. So let's click OK. This Power Query is giving data to inside the data model, which is to the Power Pivot. So we have to wait until the data gets loaded. So it will take 3 to 5 minutes. It depends on the RAM available to your laptop or system, right? And once it is being completed, we will see the view of all 4 million rows together in the Power Pivot. Alright, so it shows us that 4.1 million of rows has been loaded, right? Now the question will come that where is the data? I can't see the data right here. So as I have told you that it is being shifted to the data model and that's available inside the Power Pivot add-in. So here it is. So make sure that you have Power Pivot enabled and we will go to manage. Okay. So click on as it is written here, data model, click on manage. It comes from different Excel workbooks. And you can see here, Power Query was smart enough to append the data correctly below each of the header. So as you can see that the day, month, year, sales date and the names of the files. And you can see here record 1 of 4194300, which means that you can see this big data more than 1 million of rows. Technically, you can here look at this. This is the 4 billion of records or data in one sheet of Power Pivot, right? So if you have 10 million, 11 million of records, you can append that through Power Query first and shift that to the data model. And one more thing which is very important is that if you want to do analytics on this particular data set, on this big data, what you can do is you can create a pivot table and then you can add some slicers, visualization, and you can do analytics. But remember that the Power Pivot, when you append the big data into the Power Pivot, Pivot understands the DAX data analysis expressions. So the modern Excel user needs to learn data analysis expressions, DAX, rather than he is working on a Power BI or Microsoft Excel. So DAX language can give you a flexibility to fetch some numbers out of the data. So this means that primarily whenever the modern Excel user who is using Power Query or Power Pivot for the big data sets and using the BI tools in Microsoft Excel, what technically needs to update themselves in order to learn Power Query and Power Pivot and DAX language as well, right? So I hope this has resolved your issue. Let me show it to you. Let's get the data on the main screen. So I will click on pivot table and it will say where we need to create a pivot. So let's create here. Click OK. And let me show you the number of the records here. So month and let's see values. And you can see that each other sheet consists of around 1 million of records. And we have successfully 4 plus 1 million of records in one spreadsheet. That was the Power Pivot, right? Alright, so now later on, if you decide that if you want to go back to the Power Query for some transformations, so what you can do is you can go to the Data tab again and click on Queries and Connections and just right click here and click on Add It. It will open up a Power Query editor. Now, one of the best part you have observed that I showed you that each of the Excel workbook, there are some less columns and there are some more columns and sequence was different. But technically, Power Query has this intelligence that they have matched the headers and they have compiled it successfully below each header that data. Now think of it. If you are doing appending manually from different Excel workbooks, that will give you a painful and time-consuming things to rearrange and sort the data and to gather the data, right? But Power Query handles it smartly. And one more thing is that if, example, next month, if the user add a new file which is extracted from any kind of software or ERP software, the user just paste this raw file here in this particular folder. What happens? I mean, let's say if I make a copy here, copy, paste, and let's say this is for the month of May, right? So we have now an additional file here. So we don't need to rerun the entire process. Let's go to the Excel, okay? And let's go to the Data tab and let's click on Refresh All. And let's see what happens. So now, as you can see here, now we have 5.2 million of rows. Before we have 4.1 million, right? And that will be added in the Power Query appending process. Alright, so now you can successfully see that we have now 5.2 million of records and we added the main file into the folder as well. So technically, if you later on delete any file from the data source folder, or if you add something raw data, you don't need to run that. You just need to refresh and that's it. The records will get updated in the data model and as well as Power Query. So I hope you got an idea how to deal with very large data sets in the Excel. The practice is now being changing. The users of the Excel needs to learn modern Excel to make yourself more groomed to in the workplace in order to work with the bigger data sets. So you need to learn Power Query and Power Pivot. Thank you.